Detecting and responding to threats in the cloud is harder than doing it on-prem. Even when you do have the visibility you need, legacy security workflows weren't designed for the speed and complexity of cloud environments. Cloud-native security solutions from ExtraHop are purpose-built to spot threats across the hybrid attack surface, provide detailed investigation steps, and help you automate response. Request your 30-day free trial at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. Learn how to prevent account takeover attacks and gain some insights into bot detection with Google Cloud. Tomorrow, we'll be hosting a webcast with them. Viavi Solutions is also in the mix, upcoming webcast. Make sure you go to securityweekly.com/webcast, visit/on-demand for our previously recorded ones. No stranger to the show, Ferruh Mavituna is, of course, the founder and CEO of NetSparker. He joins us today to talk about debunking DAST myths. Welcome, Ferruh.
Hey, Paul. Nice to be here again.
Yes, nice to have you. So it's interesting, Ferruh. We were talking in the previous segment about tool fatigue, right? And we've seen that on the agent side, right? We've seen that in other areas of InfoSec. And I personally feel this pain. There's so many different tools that I need in my CI/CD pipeline, in my SDLC, right? I need static analysis, binary analysis, SCA, container security at runtime, container scanning. Do I still need a DAST in all these mix of tools? And I pose that to you because I know you can handle it, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So the thing is about the tool fatigue. I think that's a very good point. And there's a historical challenge with DAST, right? So DAST, I think at one point have a kind of a unfair rap to it, right? The bottom line was everyone's thinking, hey, look, it only finds like very simple things, very low hanging fruit, and the coverage is not that great. And the theory of that, I've got 100% coverage if I see the source code, and I cannot get good coverage if it's black box kind of approach. So all of that mix put DAST in a weird state. And I've been in the industry almost like 15 years now, like on the DAST piece, and 10 years, actually running NetSparker. So it's been over a decade actually building and selling a DAST, and I've seen like various stages of that. So DAST was almost one of the original application security solutions, but the limitations of it, and back in the day, there were a lot of challenges with the practicality of it, and a lot of DAST tools actually stayed behind of the whole Web 2.0 movement, so single-page applications, new frameworks, and all of that, which ended up with this situation that, a lot of people got a bad taste in their mouth from their previous DAST experiences, be it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 19 years ago, whatever. So as a result of that, you ended up in this situation. I used to have DAST, but like it doesn't work, or people never exposed the DAST, like kind of assumed because of like written, told, whatnot, it doesn't work as well. Yet the situation in real world today, and where DAST is today, like, support of any kind of JavaScript, single page applications, sophisticated authentication, API testing, and the accuracy as technology being black box more accurate than anything else out there, is actually created this like a very good starting point, in addition to improve your, like if you have something, that is a great addition and it will increase your coverage, like definitely. But it's even a bigger thing if you are just starting it, and if you just start from like this all of the tool sets, then it's actually kind of significantly harder, because DAST is one of those things. Hey, I have it, I run it, I got the results, and it's like a very same day event that you actually get to the resolution. Compared to, let's integrate these, let's look into it, let's configure it, and in 1 month, possibly we will be fixing something.
Yeah, right. Matt?
So I was in this space right about the same time you were, right? Because I was at Qualys. We were building the web app scanner, one of the early DAST. And so here's kind of the way we used to talk about this 10 years ago, and I'm curious how it shifted or hasn't shifted. We used to position the DAST as a mile wide and an inch deep. It gave me the ability to scale a lot of web apps, but maybe not super deep, because there was always some potential limitations with authentication, all these other things. This is 10, 11 years ago. And then on the other side, people were like, well, if I want to do a deep dive into my application, you're going to use a web inspect or one of those products and put a person behind it and interact with the application and really understand where those issues were. And that's what we had, like 10 years ago. We've seen so much evolution in the space. Do those things, are those still the way people position against DAST and some of the old static deep dive tools like Web Inspect, or has the technology shifted enough where you are getting more depth out of your DAST than maybe we were 10 years ago, and some of these other older tools just aren't providing value anymore? Just curious.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. So, I mean, the simple answer, yes, the modern DAST today is, and there's obviously, just like any other tool, you got bad ones and you got good ones. So providing you have a good one, modern DAST today can go very deep. And by default, will go way deeper than almost anyone assumes, And we have seen this real example of, companies almost being reluctant on moving to, DAST solution or adopting a DAST solution. I'm not talking about like two-person just run DAST against one website. That always happens. But organizational move is a bit more challenging. And we have seen a lot of organizations being very reluctant to adopt it, but they change their mind real quick because of when they see the value. It's only the question was like, can we get to a proof of concept stage? And the difference between what happened was, and I think, you both, like Paul and you, know this quite well. The industry kind of shifted in a different way. So the security industry today built in certain giants on network security, and later on SaaS companies, again, like significantly bigger than any kind of dynamic company. And now in the last 5 years, we are seeing bigger companies building, DAST, and also other new companies coming in, like we talk about IAST, we talk about RASP, and other application security solutions in the market. But the history, the narrative kind of built by these massive companies who started with network security or lead these static source code analysis revolution on security in those years. So today, if you kind of grew up in that, either like, a lot of people started their security engineering world with people keep talking about shifting left, keep talking about network security, all important and very good things, but almost inexpensive of anything else. And as you said, the companies like Qualys, Tenable, etc., they were also very positioned on the DAST at a very different level, or web application security at a different level. And today, all these companies coming from that background, but now realizing web application security is a super big deal today. And now they still need to be in the game, but because they haven't built it, it's just a catch-up game for them. Whereas, companies such as us, like working on this for a decade or longer than a decade, because from the beginning we knew this was the future of the world.
It's interesting as I think about this particular aspect of application security in all the different tools we may have to test the application at different points, all the way from source code to checking in to QA, runtime, all that stuff. Many of them lack actually loading the application in a browser, right? I mean, if you think about static analysis, I'm not loading in a browser, I'm looking at the source code, right? I can look at the composition of my application. That's still not loading it in a browser. You're not going to be able to test the application unless you load it in a browser. And I think when people are thinking about DAST today, I think a good question is like, what browser are you using, and how is it loading websites? Because that is a huge piece of automation. Sure, I as a tester can load the website in a browser, open up my debugging tools, and start going through it. That takes forever, and you should do that on some. That is going to happen, and it's a lot of fun and challenging, and it's awesome. But you can't do that for 1,000 websites, right? Even if you had a large team, you couldn't do that. So you need a DAST. What browser is NetSparker using, and how has that kind of evolved over time, Ferruh?
Yeah, there is actually, I think you kind of touched to the very crux of the problem and the core difference between Dust versus another technology. So, NetSpark, we used to use Internet Explorer back in the day because it was like the most dominant browser at the time, but switched to Chromium for a good time now. It must be at least 3 years or so.
Okay.
If not longer. And at one point, we even supported actually 2 different engines, just on the transition. Hey, we still got like Internet Explorer, only intranet websites. But the key thing here, this is exactly why the core difference between a solution like SAST and DAST. So while SAST, you got that, coverage, theoretical coverage, and in practice also, it will find stuff like, oh, yeah, you got a crypto problem, because that's very visible and clear-cut case on source code investigation. But in terms of what is actually exploitable, that is where DAST comes in. And as you said, because you can actually run the application like an actual attacker. So I think the bottom line on that is the closest thing you can ever get to an actual penetration tester. There is nothing else gets as close as DAST to an actual penetration testing and a real-world assessment. And when you do that at a sophisticated level, like you can load everything, you can log into single-page applications. So like the whole idea is how much we can emulate an actual attacker and show the real risk. And not only show, like prove the real risk do exist. And then, as you said, like how do you scale it to thousands of applications? Because a real red team or pen testing service or whatever, it's never going to scale to that level. So you have to be doing that in an automated fashion.
It's interesting. It's almost like DAST is attack simulation for web applications, the way you just described it, Ferruh, right?
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this is kind of like, if I go back to, again, let me see, 2006, which is initially when I started to develop NetSpark, as one person. That's, 14 years now, so that's crazy. But if I go back, my main motivation was exactly that. So I used to work as a web application pen tester. Well, I used to work as a penetration tester, but because of my application security expertise, I ended up like web application security guy in the company. So like all these key application security tests, testing methodology, that was all me. But doing application testing day in and day out, and I used to use other DAST products, right, in the market, stuff like WebInspect. And I think they were cool. But when I used them, there were like so many big gaps that I'm like, this could have been better. This could have been better. You can detect better. You can get a better coverage. You can remove this false positive problem. There are like so many improvements in my mind. And actually in 2006, I ended up like, look, I'm just going to write a tool that actually supports all these findings and remove false positives and increase the coverage and all of that. And the tool became a thing by itself. But the whole motivation was about, as a pen tester, I have to be better. I have to cover better. And manual pen testing is never, ever gonna get enough coverage on a test. And if anyone ever claims so, they don't know what they are doing. I'm very blunt on this. Like, if you understand application security, you can never say you can get a good coverage on a website on a black box testing manually. It's impossible.
Yeah, and many testers are using some kind of tool to help map the application, a subset of tools, right? Because you can't manually visit every single API endpoint in every page within the application. You need some kind of automation. Even if you're doing a air quotes manual test, right? You still have something that's helping you with that process.
Right. So like normally in a normal pen test, what you would expect, at least having some sort of fuzzer or smart fuzzer, right? Then expect, some sort of crawling support. So you got a better coverage on crawling. But once you crawl all the endpoints, now you got to get into the fuzzing state. Now the fuzzing is complicated because when you start smart fuzzing, well, you effectively have your simple dust. Like that's the bottom line on the dust, right?
That's how I approach a manual pen test, by the way, is basically you just kind of crawling through, whether automated or manual, and then I'm fuzzing things that I think will yield the best results, right?
The way I see it, that is where you start. And if you don't do that, you didn't do your job. But like where it gets interesting, where the human element comes into it, where you see the interactions, where you see these complex problems and the logical issues and the business issues and the stuff that is not just, I send an input and get a reply, and the reply looks like might lead to a vulnerability. But you actually think about, hey, within this context of application, if I run into this interaction, if I'm assuming there's this backend system, I must be trying something if I can travel through. So like, that is why the individual pen tester is super important and always will be a key part of a good application security program. But if you try to make that person also cover what can be automated, you're just wasting your money in the human resources department.
Right.
And if you are testing this and not doing the automation, then you're just not doing a good job. So like, I always see that the DAST and an actual pen tester is your mix. But also when it comes to, tooling and automation, CI/CD, the fact that you cannot have a pen tester ready for every single release of yours or every single commit. So that's not scalable. So you got to solve that as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you see the bug bounty? I look at the bug bounty reports, right? And a lot of times the discoverer of that particular vulnerability, they've got some payout, right? Will do a nice write-up and go into like excruciating detail. Do you read those and be like, how can we automate this? And because I'm sure there's a percentage that over time the techniques in the code that's implementing that vulnerability become more common, and it's worthwhile to look into how to automate that.
Oh yeah, actually that's part of, like, our team does that. But also I just read one today, for example, someone was talking about, I forgot the details of the vulnerability, but any vulnerability relatively a CV and how they exploit it in like so many other systems. And I was just looking at it, okay, is this something automatable or does it require like a human touch kind of thing? And it was, lo and behold, very automatable up to a point, which was good enough, and which actually can prove the vulnerability is real and not a false positive. But what is interesting about bug bounty, and historically this has been the case, bug bounty is a prime example why you can see DAST brings immense value into the mix. And we got customers with big bug bounty programs. And one of the ways they actually calculate ROI today on our product is like, oh, you saved me this much money because how much would my payout would be if I were to release this and someone else find it.
Yep, that's a great point.
And on that bug bounty piece, also another great example. When companies, like some big companies done it and they still do it, obviously, they start, now we are doing bug bounty and we will launch our scope like next week. And they release this, hey, here's my 50 assets and this is the scope and whatnot. And then you can see almost first 100, 200 vulnerabilities, right? All of those stuff so obviously could have been found by a DAST, like a good DAST, right? And I'm just like double checking everything people found and like, yep, got that. Oh, we would have missed this because this is not a like automatable vulnerability, very specific to the company, very specific
to the app. Some vulns get very specific to the app.
Or like, it's kind of a business logic kind of vulnerability, which again, DAST is not capable to handle. But also, well, honestly, there's nothing else capable to handle that. It's like a human element.
Yeah, no, agreed. Matt?
Yeah, I mean, bug bounty programs are very similar to penetration testing programs in some respects, right? There's a level of maturity before you're ready for a pen test. Have I done a basic vulnerability assessment to see what vulnerabilities are there before I hire a pen tester? I mean, what you just described is the same thing from a bug bounty. Have you done a standard DAST to make sure you catch all the low-hanging fruit before you open yourself up to a bug bounty? Because you could have caught, a ton of that stuff before you even launch your bug bounty program.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, low-hanging fruits are like, easiest piece. But even after that, what is like kind of, again, on the DAST is interesting. There's actually very sophisticated level attacks that your average pen tester, I'm not even talking about random bug bounty person, and there's like great skill set there, but I'm talking about like your average pen tester is going to miss. And there are like multiple reasons for that, because they won't have the coverage, but also like how many pen testers got a framework ready to go for out-of-band testing kind of problems? Like they're very complex challenges. And unless you have automation behind it, manually, very complex to test for it. So if you have done your DAST configuration, done your sweep, there's like a lot of things that you could have just identified. I'm not talking about just, hey, I found a, weak ciphers on your SSL kind of issues. I'm talking about, hey, you got a second order SQL injection through this, or you got this weird SVE which allows us to write log file, which then leads to the code execution. Because we actually spend time to build that complex interaction to check for that vulnerability. And your average pen tester might not know it, but your senior pen tester will know. So the whole idea is how you can get that, bring senior expertise that can be automated into a tool and make it useful not only security engineers, but also for developers and people who are not doing security day in and day out, and which is another massive advantage of DAST. Hey, if you got a pen test team, and if you got a very mature security program, and if you've been tested like 10 times externally on that application, when you buy DAST, it's just more like a policy, So you think about insurance level, if I ever happen to introduce any vulnerability, which is important. But where you get like massive return, I have this 500 application. There's no mature security program behind it. If I scan all of this, then you will have this like tons of real vulnerabilities from like very high impact SQL injection kind of things to, okay, you missed this security best practice range.
Yeah. Ferruh, do you find sorry, Matt, I was just going to ask if you find in the process that if many organizations reach the point where they can automatically spin up environments, scan them with the DAST, provide it login credentials, which means my DAST can delete accounts, can delete data, right? And it doesn't matter because it's really just a temporary environment for that scanner. Is that table stakes now, or do you find a lot of organizations trying to reach that point?
I think a lot of organizations trying to reach that point. It doesn't mean they are there. So this is like a similar story. Almost every single organization in the world at a level, if I tell them, hey, do you want to do secure SDLC? By all means, yes. The answer is always yes. But the reality is where they are today is, look, you just cannot do it. Because when you have 500 websites out there, that you don't even know whether they're vulnerable. Heck, you don't even know whether you have 500 websites.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about securing, 300 websites on your SDLC pipeline. That's just a dream. That's not going to happen today. To get there, you got to walk first, then you can run, and you can ensure the future vulnerabilities doesn't happen. So similar to that, like, yes, that's what they want to do, but they cannot do it today. And it will possibly take them, according to different organizations at different journeys, but easily can take them from like 6-12 months to like 2-3 years, really. Because
to cover hundreds of applications in that model is really hard. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like you got all those applications out there and you're not in control of them. And now you want to move into this like almost nirvana of security testing. And that doesn't happen overnight. That's a progress to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where I was going to go, right? Is you've got so much potential legacy applications sitting out there. We're not even thinking about securing them through the pipeline, Paul.
Yeah.
Right?
They're not in containers yet. Yeah.
Right. They're not in containers, or they're not in my SDLC, and they're not tied into all my new tool sets. I just integrated into this brand new CI/CD pipeline. You have all this legacy stuff out there. And how do you go secure that basic legacy set of applications and then over time figure out how to start to secure them through the pipeline? That's the challenge. And that's where DAST has some advantages over some of these other tools, because they skipped all those early steps. Long time ago.
Absolutely. And you know what? Like in 2015, when we built NetSpark for Enterprise, this was the whole thing. What we have seen, in 15, right, there weren't like tons of applications in main organizations. Well, they weren't aware almost, right? And we said, okay, what we are seeing as a trend, organizations will have hundreds, if not thousands of web applications, internal, external, all that. And we realized while there are DAST solutions, none of them can scale. I'm not talking about technical scaling. Yeah, they could have scanned 1,000 websites, but that means nothing. When you scan 1,000 websites, and when you have 10,000 issues, 10 issues on average, which is quite common, because you got false positives, you got real stuff, you got non-actionable stuff on an average DAST, then what do you do? So this was a huge thing. You got no solution, right? And what we built, and which we could have built because we had proof-based scaling, meaning out of 10,000 issues, I will tell you with 100% confidence that how many of them gonna get you hacked right now with no false positives whatsoever. So once you're able to do that, now what is possible with NetSpark or Enterprise, with that product? You say, hey, here is my 1,000 websites. Go ahead and scan. And scan takes like a day. And tomorrow, you know which one of them can be hacked right now with no questions, absolute certainty and proof. So like that's the first step, getting to the true value at scale. But the second step is the missing piece in the whole thing for the in the past, which is as soon as you got the vulnerability, you create a ticket to the person who's going to address it. And once they address it, then you retest whether it's been fixed correctly. So you got this closed loop situation where the security, once set up in the stakeholders level, which is also a challenge, but more like an organizational challenge and very doable. Then you got this automated fashion of, I know what I have, I'm scanning it. If I have a vulnerability, I know who's supposed to fix it. And if they don't fix it, I will know it. And I will give them a time and the process and the ticket to fix it. So if you think about it, what is crazy about it is like, what other solution in the whole wide world, whether it's a consultancy or any other model, I'm not even talking about a tool, that you can do this. Like, let's say you got $10 million and I told you, hey, secure these 1,000 websites visibly in a month. And there's literally nothing else you can do. Like, there is no other solution in the world that scales to that other than DAST. And other than like what we built to be honest, I'm not going to even say DAST because DAST is just scanning part of it, which makes this possible. But the whole life cycle of how you approach this problem.
Ferruh, my next question is on priority. And what I've noticed is that many more traditional scanners, right, will err on the side of caution because applications are so complex today. I also feel like the vulnerabilities have gotten a lot more complex. If you look at things in like XML, cross-site script, the various places in cross-site scripting in modern web applications that are using the browser and internal APIs, like that could be cross-site scripting, but you need someone to really go in there and verify it because it's different in every application. Do you have like a second level of prioritization that goes, yeah, okay, we scanned this one website, we got 1,000 vulnerabilities. These 5 definitely exploitable. Like I can prove to you there's SQL injection there. Like cool, I'm gonna go fix those. But like, is there like a next set of like 10 or 20 that you're like, you should probably look into these and it requires like a little more work? And then like the third tier is like, yeah, those are more informational and maybe a higher degree of false positive. And even if it was a true vulnerability, it's not a big impact, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So like the way we approach when we find a vulnerability, if it's, as we call it, direct impact vulnerability. So, hey, cross-site scripting, direct impact, you get execution on the JavaScript.
Yeah.
SQL injection, direct impact, you steal data from the database. So all direct impact vulnerabilities, like exploitable vulnerabilities, we will exploit and prove. Mm-hmm. But there is always that case, as you said, like the next level. Okay, I couldn't prove it's real, but I still got like almost this tingling that it's supposed to be real.
Right, like XML external entities are one that like, I swear every piece of code I look at, the exploit and the vulnerability are completely different. And I'm like, oh my God.
Right. So, I mean, to be honest, even then, we always focus on how can we also prove that, like, for example, by using out-of-band exploitation techniques or more complex techniques. But if everything fails and we still somehow believe there's not a false positive, then we will assign an accuracy rating based on a bunch of metrics just specific to that vulnerability. So every vulnerability got a different engine to it.
Yep.
And we will provide the accuracy, and we will even put a note. Like cross-site scripting is a great example.
Yeah, because
for example, it would say, hey, look, this actually, the problem very similar to cross-site scripting, but we realize there's the content type that says JSON. So like in reality, and back in the day, this was exploitable, but in today's browsers, modern browsers, this won't be exploitable.
Right.
But also we don't think it's a best practice. You might want to apply this kind of encoding to your outputs.
Yep.
And so that will be reported as non-exploitable, but something you might want to double check or like think about how you want to approach to this problem.
Right, because it could lead to a vulnerability in the future. That's an interesting aspect too, right?
Yes, and in all of that, almost there's another set of vulnerability type or issue type more like it, which is what we call best practice. And we introduced it much later on. Back in the day, we were just reporting at like information or low severity. But now we got a best practice level, which means, hey, look, you are lacking this best practice. That doesn't mean you are vulnerable today, but if you want to be better, defense in depth, like follow the best security practice, this is the stuff that you should be doing.
Right. And if those things are easy to fix, that also plays into my priority matrix in my head, right? Like, yeah, if it's going to take a team of people months to fix something that, maybe is the best practice, I'm not going to put a priority on that, right? But if across, 6 of my web applications, there's this best practice thing, and you know what? It's pretty easy to work into all 6 development teams. Yeah, I'm going to do it, right? I think that's the way we have to start looking at priority in all these applications that have become so complex.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's all about when you have thousands of assets and so many applications, it's not a question of, let's fix all. It's more like, where do we start fixing and what are the things that we should be fixing? And the immediate stuff is proven exploitable stuff. And once you're over there, that's the, trade-offs that you started to do. Like you said, there are like so many good best practice in security today that you can add a couple of lines and it will, like HSTS is a fantastic example how SSL operates. Look, you just got to have it if you care about data set. And it's like relatively easy fix. And it's almost like you need to be able to see that in almost all of your applications because it's like such a fundamental and useful feature. Easy to implement, a lot of value to gain, so good trade-off.
Matt, any closing questions?
No, this is great conversation. Having been around the DAST for a long time, it's really interesting to see how NetSparker has continued to just innovate in this space because we've seen some solutions kind of struggle, and what the team that NetSparker's built is just pretty amazing.
Awesome stuff. Ferruh, thank you so much. For folks that want to learn more, you can visit securityweekly.com/NetSparker. Ferruh, thank you again for appearing on Enterprise Security Weekly.
All right. Thanks a lot.
With that, we'll take a short break. Come back with Jason from Onapsis. Stay tuned.